What's up, fantasy fans? And happy Valentine's Day. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, but kind of in the same vein of some of my top 10s where I've done top 10 rogues, top 10 wizards, top 10 bars. I was going to do top 10 warriors or top 10 swordsmen, top 10 barbarians, and like their own separate videos. And the plan is to still do those at some point. But it being Valentine's Day, I wanted to do a top 10 romances in fantasy. Now, if you're like me, I am not a romantasy reader. I definitely prefer epic fantasy, but it is nice to see well written love stories within the fantasy genre. And I think that's actually one thing that only recently has the fantasy genre gotten right. Um, yeah, I want to go over my favorites. Now, before I get into that, I just want to let you guys know I do have a Bookstagram. I just started it like 2 days ago. I will link it down below. I will link my Goodreads down below, and I will try to. I'm very late to the Goodreads game, and I never logged my stuff on Goodreads. So now I'm going through the back catalog of all the books I read last year, which is in triple digits, and trying to write a review and give a rating for all of these books. It's going to be months and months before I get, my back catalog there on Goodreads, but yeah, go check it out. See if you enjoy my Goodreads reviews and enjoy my Bookstagram posts. All right, so real quick before I get into the list, I want to say a shout out to my girlfriend of 2 years, Lainey. She's always the first one to like my videos, to comment, to share it with her friends. I remember for my birthday, I was trying to hit 100 subscribers, and we'll set you right there in front of Harry Dresden. I was trying to hit 100 subscribers, and she was, at a bar with her friends, and she just started grabbing people's phones and having them subscribe. People who don't even follow, book content, was just making them subscribe to my channel because I really wanted to hit that 100 for my birthday, and that marked about a month of me doing this, and I'm going into 2 months of me doing this. I did have videos before that, but I really started taking this seriously around the time I posted a Janny Wurts video. And speaking of Janny Wurts, my first honorable mention is going to be Varane Sendient and Lysian from The Gallant. The Gallant is a roughly 80 page novella within her world of the Wars of Light and Shadow that kind of shows you the origin story of Varane, one of the Fellowship of Seven Magi wizards, whatever. And you follow him and this girl Lysia, and their love story is impeccably written. In 80 pages, I felt more out of this love story than many series' main love story after 7-8 books. Like, this to me, the only reason it's an honorable mention and not, like number 3 or 4 on this list is because I finished The Gallant a week ago, and I don't want that recency bias to get in the way. I will one day return to these videos, probably next Valentine's Day, so check back in a year if I'm still doing this. I will still be doing this. And, they'll probably be on the list then, but for right now, too recent, can't really justify putting it on there. And my other honorable mention just didn't quite make the cut, but I still thought was worthy to be talked about, and that is Achilles and Patroclus from Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. The love between Patroclus and Achilles, it really captivated me, and this was, I'm not a big book talk person. I'm more of a book tube. Most of the books I enjoy are, more respected by the booktube culture and less the book talk culture. But this was one book talk book that really blew me away, and it was a romantasy, a gay romantasy, and it was just, her prose style was impeccable. The way that Achilles and Patroclus's both had great character arcs in and of themselves, and it worked within their relationship with one another very well. All right, so number 10. This is the only time you'll see a Malazan list. A top 10 list where Malazan is near the bottom. And at number 10, I have Trull Sangar and Seren Padak from Malazan Book of the Fallen. And Malazan is not really well known for its amazing romances. It does have good romances. I wouldn't say the romances are bad. They never feel forced or just out of nowhere. But speaking of feeling out of nowhere, Trull Sengar and Seren Padak, their romance did feel that way at first, and then it ended up becoming my favorite romance of the entire series. At first, you're like, I didn't even realize these two were attracted to each other. But then in Reaper's Gale, which is, like a 4.5-star book for me, but is my least favorite Malazan book. It's like the only one I wouldn't give a 5 stars. You start to see some of the adoration that these two have for each other. And this is one of those love stories that is as beautiful as it is tragic. And I'm not going to get into spoilers, but Trull Sengar and Seren Padak are my number 10 pick. All right, so my number 9 is going to be from an indie published fantasy book. And I actually think that this book got, ripped off on the SPFBO. I haven't read Murder at Spindle Manor yet, which was the actual winner, but I did read Hills of Heather and Bone. And I don't know, like I really... that may be wrong of me to say that it got snubbed when I haven't read all 10 of the finalists from SPFBO 9, but Hills of Heather and Bone, its prose, its dialogue, its characters, it was such a short and compact book, and it was I'd say a slow burn, but the plot moved quickly even if the scenes felt slower. And the way it was able to perfectly balance its pacing, I finished that book in like 2 days. And it's a slow burn cottagecore fantasy, but I like grim cottagecore dark. It's definitely one of those ones that doesn't adhere to a lot of genres. Like it's a cozy fantasy, but the stakes are higher than that. It's dark, but it's not grim dark. And it does have a relationship at the forefront. And Marana and Percy, you get this love between this necromancer and this healer, and the way Percy understands Marana, and the way that he's there for her, and the way she in turn has such a high opinion of him, to the point where she, in her own self-consciousness, doesn't understand why he's with her. I just think that their relationship is phenomenal. And you get so many of these enemy to lovers, or these hot and lustful relationships within the fantasy genre, especially romantasy, and this new wave we've seen in YA romantasy. But this doesn't do that. You have a married couple. You do have flashbacks about them meeting, but for most of the modern day story, they are married. And it's nice to see a relationship that is less lustful and more caring. And more, I think K.E. Andrews did an amazing job with this romance. And then again, recency bias. That's why it's number 9. It probably deserves to be higher. Okay, number 8. This is my favorite romance. Well, second favorite romance in all of manga, and that is going to be Okarun and Momo from Dawn to Dawn. The dialogue, the awkward teenage dialogue in this book is witty, it's hilarious, it's heart-wrenching at times, and the relationship that Momo and Okarun have is just beautiful. It's one of the few like shonen that actually like swings for the fences as far as romances go, and it really is a romance story disguised as a paranormal alien story. It is 100% a romance, but it's also a found family story. I love seeing more and more additions to their little group happen, and I just think that Dawn to Dawn is a phenomenal series, and I'm so happy that it's getting some more mainstream appeal. All right, so my next pick is number 7. And that is going to be Gideon, Nav, and Harrowheart Nonagesimus from the Locked Tomb series. Now, whenever I did my Why You Should Read for the Locked Tomb, one of the commenters, I may mention her down in the title or in the description, but she mentioned that this is not a physical relationship, and she's absolutely right. I use the word lovers when describing them more to mean like an emotional connection. I do think that there are romantic leanings in the way these two feel about each other, but it's a very chaste relationship for ancient and mysterious reasons, and things that we'll probably get more confirmation on in Electo. Harrowheart and Gideon do not really, like, they're not lovers in the physical sense of the word. They do not, they don't have sex, but their emotional connection with one another is one of the highlights of this series, and the lengths that they are willing to go to defend one another, when this is like the one enemies to lovers that I will always always root for, because it wasn't toxic. Like, it was toxic, but Harrowheart never hated Gideon. She hated herself, and Gideon was a reminder to her of. See, I can't get into spoilers, but you should definitely check out this series, The Locked Tomb by Tamsin Muir. All right, so next up, I'm going to go with the Brandon Sanderson had some picks on here. I thought Vin and Ellen was great. I thought Adolin and Shalon was great. And I thought Tress and Charlie were great from Tress of the Emerald Sea. That was my number 2 pick. But my number 1 from the Cosmere has to be Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Absolutely amazing. This is my favorite. Tress is so good, but I think this is my favorite standalone Sanderson book, and probably my second or third favorite Sanderson book of all time. It beat out all of Mistborn Era 2, which I love. Oh, Mistborn Era 2 also has a great relationship with Wax and Steris, but it beat out all of Mistborn Era 2 and most of the Stormlight books. This is an absolute phenomenal book, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Even if you're not a Cosmere fan, I highly recommend you check it out. If you had a problem with Sanderson's dialogue and prose, this is still Sanderson's dialogue and prose, but he's gotten so much better at it. And if you don't want to get into Stormlight or Mistborn, I beg you to try Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And I mean, it's very Sanderson, but it's just so damn good. Even if you're not a Sanderson fan, I think you can, really love the journey we go on with Yumi and Painter here. All right. So my next pick is going to be, and this is from the movies, not the book. I'm going to cheat here. I love Tolkien, and I put the books and the movies on equal footing. And if I were going book wise, I'd probably have to go with Beren and Luthien, but I'm going to go with the movies version of Aragorn and Arwen from Peter Jackson's adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson very smartly chose to embellish and enhance the role of Arwen in the story. A lot of people say that Lord of the Rings is a boys' club and Tolkien didn't write for women. I've heard that said a lot, but I also know tons of female fans that absolutely adore this series. But we can all admit there is a representation issue in the original work. Éowyn was actually given, amazing parts in the original Tolkien book, but Éowyn was the only one. No, really the only female character that contributed to the plot outside of just being beautiful. Arwen and Galadriel, when they're talked about in the books, they're talked about as being graceful, but most of their positive attributes are related to their beauty. And I think the movies highlighted Arwen's strength, her selflessness, and her compassion for Aragorn, and giving up that immortality and choosing a mortal life. Made Arwen go from a so-so character in the books to Arwen is probably my third or fourth favorite character in the Peter Jackson movies. Probably go Aragorn, Sam, Arwen, Gandalf, or Gandalf, Arwen. I don't know, but she's top 4. She beats out most of the Fellowship for me, even Merry and Pippin, whom I love. So yeah, amazing work, Peter Jackson, on really building that relationship into being it just in the time since that movie's been out. It has inspired so many romances within the fantasy genre, and yeah, I just think it's exceptional. All right, number 4, we're going to go with Althea Vestrit and Brasher Trull. All right, so there's a lot of picks from Realm of the Elderlings that I could have gone romance-wise. Fitz and Molly is always a great choice. B. Farseer and the Stable Boy, I'm blanking on his name, from the Fitz and the Fool series. That's another one that I would really, put up there. But I have to go with what I thought was the best romance, and I think Brasher and Althea, they go through a lot to find each other, and it makes it all the more worth it in the end. And just, you really feel like, I don't believe all the time that they're soulmates. I believe that there's people that you find and you love and you choose to be with them. I think a lot of the time in fiction they have, like, not to, no offense, Wheel of Time fans, but sometimes Wheel of Time, they use like, oh, the wheel weaves as the wheel wheels. They were fated to be together. They were soulmates. And, sometimes it doesn't really feel like they're soulmates. These guys really do feel like soulmates. Not in the way that they were destined to be together, but in the fact that they fit with each other perfectly. And I don't think any other man could have kept Althea's attention, and I don't think any other woman could have could have been the perfect person for Brasher. I think that they're awesome, and the way that they both become captains of their ship, slight spoiler warning, but the way that they always view each other as equals is just phenomenal. All right, so number 3, this series and this author is actually really, really great about writing romance. And he's not thought of as a romance author, but you can tell, and also the way he speaks about his wife, you can tell that they have a very loving relationship and they both work on the Elan books together. So Michael J. Sullivan and his wife, Robin Sullivan, I think that she inspired a lot of the amazing romances that he writes. And I'm going to get 2 out of the way. Persephone and Wraith, always. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. If you did not cry, if you did not shed man tears at Always, I don't believe you. Another great romance is Royce Melbourne and Gwen Delancey from the Rhaenyra Chronicles. More specifically, recently in Drumendor, he did that romance so well. Absolutely loved it. I do think that that is essential reading for Elan fans, because I think that Royce is such an integral character, and Gwen brought out a side of him that needed to be there for him to become the hero he would become. But my number 1 goes to Gifford and Roan. Gifford was the village cripple, and Roan was a slave, and we have these 2 misfits that just their love for each other is so amazing. And slight spoiler warning, in Kingdoms of Death, or it might have been not Kingdoms of Death, in in Age of Death, or was it Age of Empire, when they're in the underworld and Roan can see the, you know, like there's that mirror where you can see like the idealized version of yourself. And when Gifford looks in the mirror, he sees how Roan sees him in the underworld, which is this perfect, beautiful man. And he was like, is this how you've seen me the entire time we've been down here? And she's so confused. She's perplexed. She goes, Gifford, this is how you've always looked to me. And that took me out. I had to shut the book. Just thinking about it right now is getting me teary-eyed. I had to shut the book, because just to know that everyone saw him as this burden, this cripple, this nothing, and that she never saw him that way, never once. And I love their relationship. I love how these 2 weak people can be each other's strength. My number 2, which honestly, now that I'm talking about it, I think probably belongs below my number 3. But I think just for like longevity wise, like I've been a fan of this couple for so long, and that is Alana and Marco from Saga. Now, this is a couple that is not overly romanticized. We find them when they're already together. We get flashbacks of how they met, but for the most part of their relationship, you know, there are ups and downs, and that, I think that's what really brought it to the top for me. They're not this perfect couple like Gifford and Roan are. Alana messes up. Marco messes up. She has addiction problems. He has, you know, a proclivity for violence that he tries to avoid, but it does come out. And you know, you get these 2 toxic traits that really do not go well with each other. But the love and compassion they have for each other and for their daughter is able to overcome their flaws and overcome the violent universe that they live in. And yeah, Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, absolute phenomenal. And then my number 1 has to be Guts and Casca from Berserk. I don't agree with what Kentaro Miura did with Casca's character and kind of like sidelined her for a while. Kentaro Miura is my second favorite mangaka of all time. No offense to him. I don't like how Casca was kind of sidelined, and her trauma kind of... I understand why he did it and the purpose it was serving thematically and for the plot. I really enjoyed Guts and Casca's dynamic, though. I thought that their relationship was very loving. I even have a tattoo of it. I will put it above, put it somewhere in this picture. But yeah, that really is the highlight of Berserk for me, is the relationship between Guts and Casca. In fact, before the traumatic events of the eclipse, Casca was my favorite character, to include Guts. I'd put Casca over Guts. I didn't always like the love triangle or quadrilateral that they were doing with like Griffith, because Griffith was in love with Guts and Guts was in love with Casca, and Casca loved Guts back, but she didn't know about Griffith. I didn't always like that, but you know, there's a scene where Guts and Casca are getting intimate for the first time, and Guts has, you know, flashbacks to some instances of SA that happened when he was younger, and the way that she comforts him in that moment, and the way that both of these characters have had, you know, sexual trauma, they've had physical trauma, they've had abuse of many different kinds. And in that moment, she didn't turn away from his pain. She hugged him, and it was a really beautiful and deep moment. And that is what made Berserk my favorite manga of all time. But now it's kind of One Piece, which has no romance, but it's One Piece. It's awesome. So yeah, those are my top 10 romances. And yep, happy Valentine's Day to everyone who's celebrating. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace.